Today, we're having the ultimate tournament of power in all of anime history, but this time, we won't be using any heroes or protagonists. Instead, we'll only be taking villains. We'll start with the prelims, where 16 contestants will battle it out, and only 8 will advance to the next round, the quarterfinals. From those 8, only 4 will make it to the semifinals, and from there, we'll get our final 2 contestants who will face off in the grand final, where we'll finally crown our ultimate winner. But before we get into that, comment down below, who do you think is going to take the crown? Come on, make your prediction without cheating. Alright, let's start with Sukuna and Shigaraki first. Now, this is honestly one of the closest fights in the tournament. Prime Shigaraki is an absolute monster. His decay can instantly disintegrate anything he touches, and even spread through the ground, wiping out entire city blocks in seconds. On top of that, thanks to All for One, he possesses ridiculous regeneration, immense physical strength, and enough speed to keep up with the strongest heroes in My Hero Academia. But Sukuna has exactly what he needs to deal with all of that. You see, Sukuna doesn't need to touch Shigaraki to kill him. His invisible dismantle and cleave attacks can slice him apart from a distance, forcing Shigaraki to constantly burn through his regeneration just to stay alive. Not to mention Malevolent Shrine, which unleashes an endless barrage of guaranteed slashes within a 200-meter radius. That means Shigaraki would be forced onto the defensive and without any real opportunity to recover. Now, don't get me wrong, Shigaraki's regeneration is incredible, but regeneration isn't infinite. The longer he's trapped inside the domain, the more his body gets overwhelmed by countless cleaves and dismantles hitting him every second. But even if we assume that somehow doesn't work, Sukuna still has his ultimate trump card, the World-Cutting Slash, which would bypass Shigaraki's defenses and cut straight through him, especially considering Shigaraki has no real counter to it. So with all that said, Sukuna wins and moves on to the next round. Now, before we move on to the next battle, I actually want to tell you guys something. We've always seen fans debating in the comments about what's overrated, what's a masterpiece, or what deserves another chance. And after reading thousands of those comments over the years, I wanted a place where all those discussions could exist in a much more meaningful way. That's why me and my team built Beacon. Here, you can keep track of every anime, movie, or TV show you've ever watched. And once you're done, instead of just throwing a random number at it, you can place it into your own personalized tier list, from perfection all the way down to not worth it. But that's not even the best part. Every series on Beacon has its own score, and it's created entirely by people just like you. So instead of relying on critics, the score is built from the opinions of others who've genuinely watched the show. For example, if I search One Piece, I can instantly see that 88% of the community has placed it in perfection. It gives you a much better idea of what the community actually thinks. But what's the fun of making a tier list if you can't compare it with your friends? Well, that's why you can also add friends on Beacon, compare your shared tier lists, and even see how similar your tastes are. It's fun, genuinely useful, and best of all, it's completely free. So click the link in the description below to check out Beacon. Plus, I genuinely love to hear what you guys think, so go on, check it out. But now, let's get back to our tournament. Next, we have Aizen versus Makima. Now, this matchup is a battle between two of the most manipulative villains in anime. On one side, we have Makima, whose control devil abilities allow her to dominate anyone she believes is beneath her. She also possesses incredible regeneration, with fatal damage being transferred to random Japanese citizens through her contract. But against Aizen, yeah, good luck trying that. You see, Makima's biggest win condition is her control ability. The problem is, it only works if she genuinely sees her opponent as inferior. But Aizen isn't some nobody. His spiritual pressure alone is enough to bring Makima to her knees, meaning there's no way she could ever perceive him as inferior. And then there's Kyoka Suigetsu. The moment Makima sees its release, she's trapped under complete hypnosis, giving Aizen absolute control over all 5 of her senses. From that point on, she has no reliable way of knowing what's real, making it nearly impossible to land a meaningful attack. As for her contract that grants her 126 million extra lives, yeah, that won't help either, considering Aizen can simply erase her soul, bypassing the physical damage transfer altogether. That means Aizen wins this one and moves on to the next round, which brings us to our next matchup, Antares versus Madara Uchiha. Now, for those who don't know about Antares, he is the final antagonist of the solo leveling universe. As the monarch of destruction, Antares is a primordial being who embodies destruction itself. His true form is basically a colossal dragon, and he possesses abilities like Dragon's Fear, which unleashes a soul-infused roar capable of paralyzing weaker opponents through pure despair. On top of that, he also has the Breath of Destruction, an attack that completely erases both matter and the soul from existence. Now, as for the matchup, he's facing none other than Madara Uchiha. As the Ten Tails Jinchuriki, Madara possesses 6-path Senjutsu, Perfect Susanoo, Invisible Limbo Clones, one of the most absurd regeneration abilities in the Naruto universe, and Truth-Seeking Orbs capable of disintegrating matter. Against most anyone else, that combination would be more than enough to secure him the victory. But the thing is, the power gap between these two is astronomical. While Madara's power dominates the Naruto universe on a planetary scale, Antares represents a universal concept of destruction. The gap in their overall scaling is simply too large for Madara's arsenal to overcome. In fact, just a single breath of destruction from Antares is enough to end this fight, as it erases both physical matter and the soul itself from existence in a matter of seconds. So yeah, Antares wins this one and moves on ahead. Next up, we have Meruem against Muzan Kibutsuji. Alright, both of these are kings in their own universes. One is the Demon King, and the other is the Ant King. If we look at Muzan's arsenal, he's the strongest demon in the entire Demon Slayer universe. His body can instantly regenerate from almost any injury, and even decapitation is completely useless against him. On top of that, he can manipulate his flesh into dozens of bladed tendrils, unleash devastating shockwaves, and inject his blood into his opponents, rapidly destroying their cells from the inside out. As for Meruem, he possesses overwhelming physical strength, incredible combat speed, and durability so absurd that he survived Netero's Zero Hand, one of the strongest attacks in Hunter x Hunter. And after absorbing Yubi and Poof, his post-Rose form became even more terrifying, granting him flight, devastating rage blasts, and Nen so refined that it could perceive opponents almost instantly. So, who do you think is gonna win this one? Comment down below before we analyze this battle. You see, Muzan's regeneration is one of the best in the verse. Against most opponents, he can simply regenerate faster than they can deal damage. But you know, regeneration only works if there's actually something left to regenerate from. Meruem's Rage Blast operates on an entirely different level of destructive power. One direct hit would completely vaporize Muzan's body, leaving absolutely nothing behind for him to regenerate. As for Muzan's second biggest win condition, his blood, which destroys an opponent's cells at a molecular level, it could work against Meruem if he could actually land it. The problem is, Muzan doesn't have the attack potency needed to bypass Meruem's Nen-infused defenses, meaning Meruem wins this one and moves on to the next round. Next, we have Dio Brando against Griffith. Dio is an absolute menace. This guy basically haunted the Joestar family for literally 6 generations. Thanks to his stand, The World, he can stop time for up to 9 seconds, giving him the opportunity to attack while his opponent is completely frozen. On top of that, he possesses incredible vampiric strength, monstrous regeneration, and enough speed to overwhelm most enemies before they even realize what's happening. As for Griffith, well, we all know how he is. After becoming Femto, Griffith ascended into one of the God Hand, transcending the physical world altogether. He possesses absolute spatial manipulation, allowing him to bend space itself and redirect incoming attacks. He can manipulate gravity with ease, wield immense telekinetic power, and most importantly, he exists under the protection of causality itself. What that means is, even if Dio stops time and rushes in for the kill, he still has no way of actually harming Griffith. Femto's spatial manipulation passively warps the trajectory of anything aimed at him, meaning every punch, knife, or stand attack is redirected before it can ever make contact. And because Griffith exists beyond conventional physical laws, Dio simply lacks the conceptual power needed to damage a member of the God Hand in the first place. In the end, Dio is still bound by the rules of the universe, while Griffith dictates causality itself. So we have our winner. Griffith moves on to the next round. Now we have Frieza versus Cosmic Gato. Alright, just to make this entire tournament fair, we won't be using Frieza in his Black Frieza form. I mean, come on. If we did, it's pretty obvious who the winner would be. You see, after unlocking his golden form, Frieza became powerful enough to battle Super Saiyan Blue Goku and Vegeta, placing his attack potency firmly at a universal level. On top of that, he's massively faster than light, can erase planets with little to no effort, and possesses absurd durability. On the other hand, we have Cosmic Gato, who is an absolute beast in his own right. After receiving power from God, Gato gained an understanding of the fundamental behavior of all energy in the universe. universe. This allows him to manipulate gravity, harness cosmic energy, and literally replicate nuclear fission explosions with his bare punches. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. In this form, Gato also gains the ability to instantly copy his opponent's fighting style, techniques, and power level just by observing them, meaning the longer the fight goes on, the stronger Gato becomes. But even with all that, the problem is he actually has to survive long enough to adapt. You see, Cosmic Gato's absolute peak is around the solar system level, while Golden Frieza scales to characters capable of threatening entire universes. The gap in raw power and speed is simply far too massive. Before Gato even gets the chance to analyze Frieza's abilities or activate another mode, Frieza can instantly vaporize him with a single death beam or overwhelm him through sheer speed alone. Gato never gets the opportunity to evolve because the fight is already over before his adaptation can even begin, meaning this round goes to Golden Frieza. Next, we have Lucius Zogratis versus Father. Okay, I know some of you might not be familiar with Lucius, but don't worry, I'll explain. Lucius is the main antagonist of the Black Cloververse and the host of the Supreme Devil Astaroth, which grants him time magic. He can use it to accelerate, slow, or even completely stop time for his opponents. Not only that, he can also see thousands of possible futures, making it nearly impossible to catch him off guard. On top of that, he wields his own soul magic, alongside gravity, spatial, and body magic, allowing him to create multiple clones of himself. He can also reshape a person's soul itself, turning them into an obedient pawn under his control. As for Father, at his absolute peak, he is the strongest being in the Full Metal Alchemist universe. After absorbing truth, he gained godlike alchemy, allowing him to manipulate matter and energy without even using transmutation circles. He can create miniature suns in the palm of his hand, generate nearly impenetrable force fields, and thanks to the millions of souls inside his Philosopher's Stone, he can instantly regenerate from virtually any physical damage. But to be honest, this isn't even a proper duel. Lucius can simply freeze Father in time using chronostasis, walk right up to him, and use soul magic to rewrite the very core of his soul. Instead of destroying Father's body over and over again, Lucius bypasses his durability entirely, erasing his consciousness and turning the god of alchemy into nothing more than another pawn under his control. And even if Father somehow had a way to fight back, there's still the overwhelming power gap. Father only operates at around city level at best, while Lucius fights at least on a planetary level. From Father's perspective, the battle is over before it even begins. So yeah, Lucius wins this one with ease. And finally, we have the last match of the prelims, Blackbeard versus Kaiju number 9. Alright, I won't drag this one out too much. Number 9 is the absolute strongest kaiju in the entire Kaiju number 8 verse. He can unleash devastating energy blasts, take over anyone, and absorb all of their knowledge, regenerate from almost any injury as long as his core remains intact, and his overall durability is off the charts. But none of that really matters in this matchup, because the one he's up against is none other than Blackbeard. As one of the 4 Emperors of the Sea, Blackbeard wields not one, but 2 of the most destructive devil fruits in One Piece. The Yami Yami no Mi allows him to generate gravitational forces capable of pulling his opponents directly toward him while creating localized black holes that crush everything they consume. And with the Gura Gura no Mi, he can literally grab space itself and shatter it, producing earthquakes powerful enough to devastate entire islands. Just one attack from Blackbeard is enough to take down Kaiju number 9. So yeah, Blackbeard takes the win here. And with that said, the prelims are finally over, and it's time for the quarterfinals. But before we move on, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel to get the best anime content there is. Now for the first match, we have Sukuna versus Aizen. Alright, this one is going to be pretty interesting. The King of Curses versus the King of It Was All According to My Plan. I mean, the moment Sukuna lays eyes on Aizen, the fight is already over. You see, Aizen's Kyoka Suigetsu grants complete hypnosis over all 5 senses. The moment Sukuna witnesses its release, every sight, sound, and movement becomes whatever Aizen wants him to perceive. But because Sukuna isn't a slouch either, he likely wastes no time activating Malevolent Shrine, unleashing countless invisible slashes before following up with a maximum output Fuga, only to realize the entire fight had been an illusion. The only real option Sukuna has here is to use his world-cutting slash. But to be honest, even that isn't enough against someone like Aizen, because again, Aizen's Hogyoku grants him true immortality, allowing him to regenerate from both physical and spiritual destruction. Not to mention the massive power gap between the two. We're talking about city to country level versus a universal level being. At this point, Aizen would simply be toying dealing with Sukuna. Next up, Antares versus Meruem. Okay, there's really no need to debate this one. There is no realistic chance, not even 1 in a million, that Meruem defeats Antares. Just one breath of destruction, and Meruem is gone for good. Next, we have Griffith versus Frieza. Again, just to remind you guys, we're using Golden Frieza, not Black Frieza, so the matchup remains fair. Now, as soon as the fight begins, Frieza would likely open with a barrage of death beams, only to watch them harmlessly curve around Griffith as space itself redirects every attack. Griffith would then retaliate by warping the space and gravity around Frieza, attempting to crush him where he stands. But the thing is, Frieza's ki is simply too overwhelming. In the Dragon Ball universe, characters at Frieza's level have broken through time, torn holes in dimensions, and overpowered conceptual destruction with raw ki alone. Against that level of power, Griffith's hacks simply isn't enough. Frieza could simply power up a massive death ball with universal level power and throw it right in front of Griffith. Griffith could try to bend space and causality, but it would ultimately collapse under the sheer power of Frieza's attack, meaning Frieza takes this round. Now for the final match before we move on to the semi-finals, Blackbeard versus Lucius. For this battle, again, there isn't much to explain. Blackbeard's devil fruits make him an absolute powerhouse. He'd likely begin the fight by covering the battlefield in darkness, then immediately follow up with a massive space-shattering quake to finish the job. But this time, he isn't up against some ordinary opponent. You see, before he can even do that, Lucius has already seen it all coming. Lucius can simply stop time, casually walk over to Blackbeard, and rewrite his soul, turning him into a loyal pawn, just like he did with Father. So yeah, there's really nothing more to say here. Lucius wins this one. And now, it's officially time for the semi-finals, where our first matchup is Aizen versus Antares. Okay, this is a difficult matchup to conclude. I mean, both of them are higher dimensional beings and are literally on a whole different level. Antares has the breath of destruction, an attack that doesn't just incinerate its target, it completely erases both matter and souls from existence, meaning it could theoretically take Aizen down if it actually lands. But can it actually land? That's the real question. You see, Aizen has the perfect counter for it, Kyoka Suigetsu. Once Antares falls under Aizen's complete hypnosis, everything he sees, hears, and even perceives as energy is now under Aizen's complete control. But even if we assume that somehow doesn't work on him, Aizen still possesses true immortality through the Hogyoku, allowing him to regenerate and evolve from even complete physical and spiritual destruction. And to be honest, I believe that would be difficult for even Antares to bypass. But yeah, this matchup is definitely controversial, so let me know who you think wins this one in the comments down below. As for my take, I lean slightly more toward Aizen here. Next, for the second matchup, we have Frieza versus Lucius. Now, this is a battle between overwhelming power and overwhelming hacks. Before the battle even begins, Lucius would likely use his foresight to witness a future where Frieza effortlessly destroys the battlefield. Knowing he can't afford a prolonged fight, Lucius immediately traps Frieza inside a massive chronostasis sphere before walking in to rewrite his soul with soul magic. But remember what I told you earlier? In Dragon Ball, characters with overwhelming power have repeatedly broken through time manipulation and even resisted conceptual destruction through sheer raw power alone. Frieza would only need to power himself up to break through Lucius's time sphere, and even if Lucius tries to use soul magic on him, Frieza's overwhelming power would likely nullify its effects, because again, we're talking about a planetary level character versus a universal level being. So here, Golden Frieza wins and moves on to the finals. With that said, we finally reached the grand final, where our top two contestants are Aizen and Golden Frieza. Now, whoever wins this battle will be crowned as the ultimate champion of this tournament. Alright, if we look at this purely through stats, Golden Frieza seems like the obvious winner. I mean, this form rivals even Super Saiyan Blue, but it's not that simple, because Aizen simply cannot be killed. Thanks to the Hogyoku, Aizen possesses true immortality. Even if his body and soul are completely destroyed, the Hogyoku forces him to regenerate and continuously evolve to overcome whatever threatened him. No matter how many times he's atomized, he comes back stronger than before. Frieza can overpower Aizen physically, but he has no sealing technique capable of permanently removing someone with true Hogyoku immortality. As the battle drags on, Frieza is forced to continuously maintain his golden form, rapidly draining his ki reserves. Meanwhile, Aizen's stamina is effectively limitless. He simply keeps resurrecting, evolving, and waiting for the inevitable moment when Frieza begins to burn out. And the instant that happens, the fight is over. So, in the end, this becomes a battle of attrition, and the winner of that is none other than Gen Sosuke Aizen, which means Aizen is officially the winner of this tournament. Click on this video next, where we made What If New Gen Villains Fought the Old Gen Ones. Go on, check it out.